Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Money Matters TV. My name is Dan White. I'm the president, founder, and CEO of Daniel White and Associates. We are a retirement planning firm headquartered in Glen Mills, Pennsylvania. We also have two satellite offices, one in Middletown, Delaware, and one a little further south in Lewis, Delaware. And we work primarily with people transitioning, making that transition into retirement. So we work with pre-retirees and people that are already retired, making sure that they can retire in the comfort and lifestyle they want without worrying about running out of money. And the big question I'm getting these days is everybody wants to know what's happening with the market. And I would have to say, turn the radio and the TV off if you're worried about the market. What we are seeing so far in March is a lot of oil volatility. I mean, ever since we went into Iran, the oil supply, everybody's worried about the oil, and that is what's driving the markets right now. This volatility is strictly about oil. We know gas prices went from about $2.90 up to about $3.50 in about a week. So when you get inflation news and the news about oil like this, the market is going to react. And we got a little relief yesterday. President Trump came out and said the war's almost over. That's good news. But I think they're also meeting. The G7 is meeting over there, talking about releasing some oil reserves that they have, and that kind of settled down the oil market a little bit and took it a little lower. But at the end of the day, you got to tune out the noise, and if you have a plan in place, follow the plan and don't worry about what's going on in the outside world. So it's kind of my spin on the markets today. And now I want to introduce my co-host. I'm pleased to say we have Robin Bond with us today. Robin is the founder of the employment firm Transition Strategies, LLC in Wayne, Pennsylvania. Her primary focus is to represent the employee's best interest in all types of workplace matters. Robin is a former criminal prosecutor and in-house corporate attorney known for her ability to help clients negotiate successfully for enhanced pay, perks, protections in both employment contracts and severance agreements, including issues relative to incentive and equity compensation. Robin has been actively involved in thousands of successful deals, and we're happy to have Robin join us today. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you, Sam. So happy to be with you today.
Thanks. It's great to have you. And I've got a couple questions for you. I don't think we've ever done a show together, but what are some situations in which a person would want or need to call an employment lawyer?
Well, at the first sign of trouble, how's that? I tell everybody, if you have a problem at work, you think your boss is being mean to you or treating you differently, or you want to complain about something, please do not run to human resources and think that they are there to help you, because they're not. They're there to help management. So really at the first sign of trouble, well, what does that mean? Well, maybe the boss has given you a bad evaluation. You are unfairly criticized for something. You see something happening that isn't right or that violates policies or doesn't seem like it's lawful. The first thing you want to do is call an employment lawyer who in your jurisdiction, the state where you live, and run these facts by that lawyer to kind of get a sense of what you should do and how you should do it.
That's kind of, I'm thinking as you're speaking, that's got to be a little bit of a tricky situation. I mean, you correct employees all the time. When does, constructive criticism become he's harassing me?
Well, here are some red flags to look for. Like the question might become like, is my boss just a tough boss? Or am I in a legally defined hostile work environment? Because people call me all the time. Even this morning, I just took a call. Oh, my boss is doing all these terrible things. Well, they weren't illegal. The question is your boss doing something to you because you've complained and they're retaliating against you? Is it because of your Title VII status, your age, race, religion, gender, national origin, disability, veteran status? So if you're not really sure why something is happening, that's when it's a good thing to go talk to an employment lawyer. What are the red flags for a hostile work environment? Things like, well, I thought these were my goals, but as soon as I hit the goals, my boss moved the goalpost so that I couldn't succeed. Okay. Secondly, the boss cuts me off from my support systems. I don't get the memos. I don't get invited to meetings. My boss ignores my emails. These are all like big red flag warning signs. The other thing might be, well, the boss denied that he told me to do something, blames me for things that, he told me to do last week. And these are the kind of things which really are red flags that you should be seeking out help.
So if somebody is having trouble at work or they feel like they're in a hostile environment, is there any kind of tips of things they can do before talking to an employment lawyer?
Well, documenting is really important. So if you're having a bad experience and you can go home and on a personal computer, never on a work computer, and not on a computer that is connected to a company server. Because even if your personal email is open on a home computer and it's connected to the company server, when the company server backs it up, they back up what's on your personal opened email. So you document what happened, what was said. Pretend you're a reporter. The who, what, where, when, why, how. What happened, what was the date, who was present, so you know the witnesses. And you're kind of developing a chronology of events, but you're keeping track of it because otherwise you have to keep track of it in your brain and you won't. And you forget things. So that's really important, is to document. And then secondly, or thirdly, I guess, after, let's just say the boss shifts a goal. You thought you achieved something and they said, well, no, now you have to do, 3 more sales within the next 30 days. So you would want to do a CYA kind of memo and document like, hey, although you told me this, now you're switching this goal, and whatever it is, you want to document what they said. So then if you can go out and achieve the next threshold or the next level, they can't say, oh, no, I didn't say 3, I said 6 sales. So you're trying to document. If the boss doesn't rebut what you say, you've sort of created the fact pattern. I see this a lot of times. People don't push back or they don't rebut to correct the record. And then the only thing that's ever in the file that the in-house employment lawyer sees is what the boss documented. They don't see any pushback or rebuttal, so they think the boss was, perfectly right in what they were doing.
Yeah, one of the things we had talked about before the program came on was this age discrimination. And I said, that's got to be a pretty tough thing to prove. With my business, we deal with retirees, and you'll see people that come in and say, yeah, I was planning on working until 65, and 62, they quote eliminated my position.
Yeah.
Which, did they eliminate it, or hey, are they going to, wait 6 months and then fill it with somebody at half the cost?
That could happen. In fact, I have situations like you're the top performing salesperson, yet when the RIF comes along, they keep the guy who's 20 years younger and hasn't sold a thing, and you're at 110% of quota. That's an age claim. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an age claim. So it depends on your facts. And this is why you really want to get legal counsel in your jurisdiction to assess what are your strategic best next moves. Might be filing a claim, which is the precursor to a lawsuit you have to file with the EEOC and the State Human Relations Commission, or it might be just trying to negotiate a better package and moving on. But please, there's a lot of age discrimination out there. Don't just sit back and let it happen to you. Get some help.
For sure, for sure. So we do have a question from our audience. Nancy Lehman out of Boston wants to know, can I use small claims court for a straightforward final paycheck claim?
Okay, happy to talk with you about that, Nancy. Depends again on your jurisdiction. The answer generally is yes. In commonwealths like Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, you use the magisterial district courts, and you can recover a straightforward sort of final paycheck, generally up to about $12,000. You don't need a lawyer to do this. It's a small claims administrative process, and you have to file in the jurisdiction either where you worked or where the company is located. Now, most states have wage payment laws like we do in Pennsylvania. And if you do not get your last paycheck on the next regularly scheduled pay date after it was due, it could be a violation of your state's wage payment law, which entitles you to damages, interest, penalties, and attorney's fees. So these are, good claims to explore, because even if the value of the paycheck isn't that great, if attorney's fees can be recovered, attorneys may be interested in taking your claim. So good luck to you, and definitely pursue that.
Thanks for that answer, Robin. And if anybody of our listeners out there has a question for Money Matters, here's how you can send in your questions to get those answered.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
All right, back to our program, and I'm pleased to announce that we have a guest on the show today. We are pleased to bring on Lily Vittayarukskul, the CEO and co-founder of Waterlily. She's got a very diverse background, and we're going to ask Lily to tell us a little bit about it. First question we have for you, Lily, tell us a little bit about Waterlily, who you are, what you do, and how you got into this.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. Waterlily, what we're known for is being the first ever predictive AI software that predicts an individual's or a client's future long-term care needs and helps them build out that care plan and financial plan that they can actually afford, and mitigates a lot of the familial devastation that comes with navigating long-term care reactively for our aging loved ones. I built the company when once we navigated a personal long-term care event ourselves. My aunt was diagnosed with terminal stage colon cancer. We navigated 2.5 years of her daily long-term care needs since she couldn't take care of herself. It was financially devastating once we realized health insurance wouldn't cover this, and it was devastating for our relationships. Navigating the best form of care, and everyone had a different definition of what that would look like. So I pivoted my background early on from 12 to 16, was doing some work with NASA, went to college early at 14 for it, but navigated the event at 16, pivoted my background into genetics and AI, led product and engineering at multiple early stage companies in the healthcare industry before realizing that this problem wasn't getting solved. And so that's what caused me to found the company Waterlily.
Wow. I was going to ask you, like, why is long-term care so important? But I think you've already answered that in the sense of how financially devastating it can be. And in light of how devastating it can be, why is long-term care planning so overlooked so often?
Oh my goodness, that's such a fantastic question. I would say first off, long-term care and how it happens looks different now than it has in previous generations, where when we think of our aging loved ones, such as our grandparents and our parents, and when they get older and more frail and they're not able to, get themselves out of the chair and out of the bed or take a shower by themselves. Oftentimes, we had our the women oftentimes in the household, whether it is the daughter-in-law or the daughter themselves, that would be under the same household and take care of mom or dad in this case. And we live in a different cultural structure where now we're farther apart than we ever have been. We have single generations for each household. And it's a hard topic to talk about, and most parents don't want to talk about it until it's too late. And so we designed software at Waterlily so that you could actually see what that trajectory looks like, and it's a conversation starter once people start to understand what this event could look like and what they actually want it to look like.
See that? Yeah.
That's interesting, Lily. I deal in the retirement planning space, and you're right. Long-term care, it's very important, but a lot of people just take the attitude, I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't happen to me. And my favorite response, well, hope is not a strategy. That's not really a strategy. It could cost an arm and a leg. So, how do you use AI in kind of formulating what the needs would be and what the costs would be?
Another really fantastic question. So The way that we built out our predictive results to predict things like likelihood, age it'll start at, that duration of time, how many hours a family would step in, is from pulling from our data set of over 500 million data points of families that we've been
Wow.
following for several decades. And we built out the first ever personalized, algorithms to make that individual projection of, essentially from a 3 to 5 minute intake form where we ask social demographic information, some medical information, some financial information, all highly predictive. We essentially look at the lookalike families that already navigated this event, and we show you what your most likely trajectory would look like, based on having similar characteristics as them, and asking you, do you want that trajectory? Are you can you afford to pay for that future event? And when we account for healthcare inflation, it is for folks today that are navigating care, it costs $250,000 out of pocket. But for those folks that are 60s, that cost can balloon up to, what we see is like anywhere between like $1 to $2 million, and those that are in their 50s, $2 to $3 million. So
Oh,
a lot
wow.
of people account
Wow.
for that inflation factor and the planning that's important.
Those are staggering numbers, actually. But I wanted to know, like, how does this platform work? Could somebody like me sign on to the platform and say, okay, well, what would, Robin's long-term care needs be? Or do you only do this for companies?
It's a fantastic, great question. So our system is used by financial professionals and care professionals. So folks like Dan, essentially, we have a lot of wealth advisors on our platform, or financial advisors or insurance agents that do holistic financial planning. And a part of that is assessing long-term care risks that could really unravel an entire retirement plan that you've built. Folks at continuous care retirement communities are starting to pick up our software as well. And we have tens of thousands of families that come to our website and sign on to our wait list, waiting for the ability to use, the software directly themselves without having to talk to anyone.
Yeah,
Our
right.
goal is, how can we just get the software into the hands of as many families as possible with expert resources, as much as possible as well.
So one question I wanted to ask, Lily, and I'm sure you deal with every different type of long-term care solution. The big objection that we hear from clients is, well, if I never use it, and I'm paying 500, 600, 700 hours a month for an insurance policy, I never used it. My answer is always, well, yeah, you don't buy homeowners insurance hoping for your house to burn down.
Yeah.
But there are plans out there today where they put the long-term care rider on an annuity or a life
Yeah.
insurance
Or life
policy.
insurance. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you don't use it, it's going to pass on to a beneficiary anyway. I'm sure you deal with both types. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We see, when we think of long-term care solutions, a lot of folks initially assume insurance solutions, when in truth, you can actually build out a long-term care plan where it's fully successfully funded by self-funding in some way. It matters which each person goals actually are. What's fascinating is that where we've won awards across the board, whether it is being recognized by XYPN's advice competition and winning last year's competition, or being recognized by Wealth Management's 10 to Watch or Forbes 30 Under 30, where we have award-winning software is how we're able to pull over 1 million quotes today from the top insurance carriers in this space, whether they're traditional long-term care products, like with riders, hybrid, like asset-based hybrid policies where you pay in the premium, but if you don't have the event, you get that premium back and maybe even a little bit more. And we grab all the potential offers and all the ways in which you could get a quote. And we built the first ever way to competitively find the best possible quote for the client sitting in front of you. So we essentially model the claim scenario. We model, if that long-term care event happened, how would this policy uniquely pay out for the client sitting in front of us, find the highest ROI, we stack rank that to the top. We show you the underwriting analysis as well. Is this client likely eligible or ineligible for this policy that is the most competitive for them? And then you could compare that against, well, what if I decided to sell my home instead, or use my 401k, or pull from a brokerage account? You could then compare competitiveness of different strategies that you're interested in.
Huh. Well, since you're talking about that, do you have an example maybe of how you helped an individual, or how this product has helped an individual or two to achieve these
Yes.
goals?
Great question. So I'll talk about two types of individuals. One person that was motivated, one client that's motivated to talk about long term, like let's just say 50-year-old John, and then you have 50-year-old Jane that never thought about the topic. No one ever brought it up with her. She doesn't know what it is. So we could be helpful in both cases. For John, that's essentially 50 years old. He might think to himself, I think I am too old to talk about long-term care, for example. A lot of people have that assumption.
Yeah.
Well, but I want to look into it. And so with the 3 to 5 minute intake form that his financial advisor gives to him, he fills it out instantaneously. He learns, okay, you have a 65% likelihood of having a long-term care event. We think most likely based on individuals that look like you, it'll start at age 87. It'll start with about 18 hours of care per week and grow into about 50
Wow.
hours of care per week over 3.5 years. And it'll cost, $2.2 million. Then we try to find you the best possible policy where, let's just say you find a hybrid policy where you, instead of saving $100,000 in a brokerage account, if you put that $100,000 into a policy instead, we are able to show you that you could get out in the future about $300,000 to $400,000 more in coverage dollars. Just comparing that apples to apples once we did that competitive analysis. Then there's Jane, who's 50 years old, where she's not aware of this topic, but to even see those variables, she understands, oh, long-term care isn't about being comfortable in retirement. This is actually, my care needs that we're talking about. There's an out-of-pocket cost. And that's where the care professional or the financial professional could lean in on strategies with her about, do you want to stay at the home? Is it cheaper to stay at the home? And we show you the difference, the hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference of choosing the home versus a retirement community based on where you live, or choosing, insurance versus self-funding, where sometimes we also see that self-funding could outperform insurance solutions sometimes as well. And so it's all about very precise, and it's not about heuristics anymore. We have real numbers that we could compute essentially.
This is kind of fascinating stuff, Lily.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm going to, being in the field, it prompted me to ask a couple questions. Number one, I've listened to a behavioral guy years ago, and he said, well, the average person thinks they're 15 years younger than they are. So it's true. So when you're 50, you're not thinking like a 50-year-old, you're thinking like a 35-year-old. I don't need long-term care. And by the time they're 65, they're still kind of on the fence, but now it's getting expensive. And one of the things that we've run into for years is they bought one policy that everybody was pitching, and now they're getting hit with rate increases right and left, and they either got to pay more to maintain the same coverage, or they got to cut their benefits, to keep the premium the same. So how does your company deal with somebody who may have already bought a solution, but now they're seeing big rate increases?
I love that you asked that question. And it's so important that we solve this problem head on, which is helping the policyholders who bought this policy and the profession and the agents or advisors that sold it to them to also be able to confidently navigate. Well, if you have a rate action letter or reduced benefit where there's 4 options and it's still vague, a lot of people who bought a policy, they bought it because it was so cheap, not because they understood that policy. And so what you do in our system is you can actually upload that policy. You could upload that PDF of that rate action letter, and we can model out essentially from the financial terms, each of offer one, you're paying in $48,000 in total, by the time you turn age 86, and it's projected to pay out $200K. Well, the next option might be the same amount of money put in, but then you get $250K instead, and we show you the ROI difference. So you're actually now able, without knowing anything about this rate action letter or this policy, we can actually model based on your most likely long-term care event, which offer are they giving you is the one that's going to be perhaps the highest dollar in, dollar out efficiency.
Wow, that sounds great. And well, it's a very exciting time. Everything is about AI now. So as this AI technology advances in your field, Lily, what do you think is next for Waterlily?
So I founded Waterlily because long-term care nearly bankrupted us. It's still an event that is out of pocket. It will continue to be an out-of-pocket expense until you run out of money and you try to go on Medicaid. Medicaid is not set up to take on the wave of our aging population that's going to run out of money reactively because they didn't do any planning. And so in terms of advancements, it is how do we solve for the immediate scar tissue of this industry? How do we solve for the lack of education on this topic, because advisors don't know how to bring up the topic in a way that's relevant to the client sitting in front of them, whether they worry about what is an average long-term care event. So we're releasing a second one that's more important is we have a lot of cognitive decline data. So the second scenario that we want to be able to predict later this year is what are the chances that you might have a cognitive decline event? So if you're worried about Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever else, can we build out a plan where you could financially afford that and your family can sustainably afford to take care of you if that were to happen as well? How do we broaden ourselves past, financial? How do we grow our base within the financial advisor space, offer more financially sophisticated tools so that they could model, their various, self-funding strategies with additional insurance products, with modeling retirement communities. As you're trying to figure out a CCRC type A or type C, we can technically model those. It's a matter of we have to, be able to accept that demand and prioritize that on our wait list. So it doesn't have to be an insurance policy. It doesn't have to be self-funding. However way in which you're thinking about, I want to receive care at the home, or I want to be, I want to go to a different zip code, or I'm thinking about paying it from these buckets of money, or I want to go I want to consider these financial solutions. We will continue to build out the best, fastest, the best, most fiduciary ways in which we could do the analysis to help you figure out which strategy may help you navigate $1 in creates $5 out, instead of $1 in only creates $2 out without a plan.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Lily, I think we got time for maybe one more question. And this is just something that, I've always, as an advisor, thought there's kind of a sweet spot for long-term care. From an age standpoint, number one, I think 50 to 60 is a great time to look at it, because 50 years old, well, by 60, hopefully you got the kids through college and you're done with the college expenses, and maybe take some of that college tuition funding to use for the long-term care. So that's number one. What's the sweet spot for the ages? And then asset-wise, you get people that are over 3 million or, 3 million in assets, and they're like, well, I don't need it. I'm going to self-insure, that kind of thing. So what's the sweet spot age-wise, and what's the sweet spot asset? When would you say they don't need it?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. I will share our algorithms are optimized for, and of course, we're the first to market in doing this with our massive data mode, and we're growing that out, and our kind of expertise and experience navigating long-term care. It's optimized for folks that are over the age of 40. And so when you think of individuals that are 40, different 40-year-olds have different retirement planning strategies. Some of them might want to consider a strategy where they pay for a traditional LTC policy, or buy a hybrid policy where if you don't have an event, you don't lose those premiums that you got in, and they might want to pay it over 10 or 20 years and they don't have to pay for it anymore. To folks that are in their 80s coming to our website and wanting to navigate the event with a policy that they have in hand or no policy. The answer is the sooner you do planning before you reactively navigate this event, it's a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars for folks that realize aging at the home might save you $100,000 in the first 2 years versus just going into a retirement community. To those that are younger that can consider insurance policies or retirement communities, where it's a difference of, do you want to pay, $800,000 into a self-funding strategy that will cover, $2 million in the future, or do you want to pay $250,000 through an insurance policy to cover the same coverage amounts?
Well, hey, I really appreciate you being on the show. That was fascinating. The next on Money Matters program, we're going to have Todd Reed from Keller Williams on the program. So I want to thank everybody for joining the show today. And until next month, have a great day.